What made you realize coworkers aren't your friends? Before we get started, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and turn on the bell so you don't miss future videos. Thanks for the support. We had an older coworker. He has a stroke at work. He was very old-fashioned, likely a little scared, and his brain was shutting down. He didn't want to go to the hospital or do anything without his wife. He just wanted her with him. So they all sat with him and watched him stroke out for almost an hour until she got there and took him to the hospital that was a few minutes away. Then they all patted themselves on the back about how well they did by not making him go to the hospital and not making a scene. He had to retire due to his injuries. In truth, they had been talking for years about trying to get him to retire, as he was starting to have trouble keeping up, partly due to his age. He was functionally an expert in our field, with 40+ years experience. Just not as fast or tech-savvy as everyone else. They treated him like he was incompetent. Only place I ever quit no notice. It's come up in interviews, and every time I name the place, the interviewers nod and go, "Ah, we've heard of them. You don't have to explain." No notice is a huge red flag in my industry. Next story. A woman I had brought up from entry level and fashioned her literal dream job for took the opportunity of my going on vacation to mount a very visible campaign as to why she was now too big to work under me, and look how much she can do when I'm not around, and shouldn't she be promoted out from under me to my level? It was totally ineffective, but still embarrassing for me in a, "why is this random underling of yours emailing me" way. I genuinely thought she was in the speak at my funeral category, given everything I'd done for her. Absolute traitor. Next story. I was working for one of the biggest home builders in the country. One day, this guy who had worked there for 20+ years was sitting at his table before work and passed away due to a heart issue. We found out at work that day, and nobody really cared that much. They told us what happened, and that was about it. He was a quieter guy, but nobody had any issues with him. This company put on my annual review that I didn't socialize with people as much as I should, and should eat lunches in the break room more often. What's the point of trying to build camaraderie if nobody really cares at the end of the day? Next story. Office role, 2019. We lost a baby. Informed my immediate manager only and one other manager. The other manager told the whole department. Proceeded to receive messages of condolence, etc. over the next few weeks from people who had no business knowing. Next story. Several things. 1. How there was always an enemy of the clique. They always had someone to talk about and hate. When that person left or was otherwise unreachable, they turned to someone else. I silently watched group texts over the years and never talked trash about anyone else with them in it. 2. I came out to someone I thought was an actual friend at work. Same interests from music and movies and TV to sense of humor and even fashion/style. We shared a lot of the same nuances too. Definitely besties material. Welp, she outed me to someone else, and then of course it spread. 3. How quickly people will report someone to management instead of just talking to them, over even the most insignificant things. Office life killed any desire for me to ever work in that environment again. I have 20 years of experience and am considered an expert in my field. When I left, I did not apply anywhere else in the industry. I just opened my own business in a related field. I would rather go work part-time at a liquor store or a Walmart before I ever went back to that world. Next story. In my line of work, we're very transient. We switch jobs every 3 to 4 years. None of the people who I planned, worked with, suffered with, celebrated with, stay in touch once we leave. No one. I tried after the first 1 or 2 switches. No more. Next story. It's shocking seeing Lord of the Flies type scenarios play out in real life under the most minimum of stress/fear of cutbacks. People are so quick to become absolute monsters, and it rarely ever actually improves anything to do so in the first place. My personal gripe are those who weaponize rules meant to protect people against power. Those rules are good to stop bosses from using authority to abuse people. They aren't made to attack random people with gossip out of jealousy and greed. Next story. My current coworkers actively talked bad about other people within the company in front of me within my first few weeks. If they're saying bad things about those people, then they're probably saying bad things about you. I decided the worst thing I'd give them to talk about was me being quiet or sticking to myself instead of fueling them. Next story. I left a company after working there for a few years, and they hired someone with my same first name. They also left after a few months. I later bumped into some old colleagues who insisted I was not name. Looked at me like I was mad. They had merged us both together. just glad it wasn't a jury. Next story. When a new employee joined about a year after I did, the business owner turned to me at a company dinner and said something so cruel and unnecessary about her that I absolutely froze. We were sitting just a few seats away from her too. I had noticed everyone talking mess about each other, but I never engaged, so I thought I wasn't part of that culture. I finally realized they'd been talking mess about me the whole time. Not work-related stuff. They always praised my work. Personal stuff, like about my body. I've gained weight coming from a physically active job to an office position. I thought I'd found a job I wouldn't dream of leaving, but I've realized those don't exist. I am grateful to be employed in this economy, and I am looking forward to the day I am able to give my notice. Next story. Something I notice is that every single person in leadership position is genuine friends with their coworkers. They hang out willingly outside of work, practically all of them. People don't always get their job by being good. I think it's because leadership would rather work with someone they enjoy than someone who is better at the job. Not to say you can't be both, or that being friends with the boss makes you bad at the job, but it matters a lot. Next story. Had a coworker who I thought I had a good relationship with, only to find out he was actively working to cut me out of deals so he wouldn't have to share commissions. We don't even split them 50-50 anyway. I get paid on the dollar amount of the deal, and he takes a minor haircut for working with me. He would be super friendly to my face, and then I caught him meeting with my clients without bringing me in on it. Next story. I was friends with my team as we all shared the same frustrations about work and would talk trash about bad coworkers in a group text. When two of them got fired for using the office gym during work hours, I was surprised and mad that they got away with doing that for so long. They would go work out for 2 hours per day while the rest of us picked up their slack. So no, your coworkers are not your friends. Next story. I've been at my job for 27 years. I have 2 lifelong friends. One is retired and we all went on vacation together. Anyone else? Nope. Most would stab me in the back if it helped them. My first job taught me that. My friends didn't want to help this family. I was a social worker in a clinic. The nurse manager, nursing supervisor, nurse practitioner, and the other social workers all told me I had to do a home visit and teach this mom how to give antibiotics. I live in the US. The only people that can legally do that are nurses, physicians, and pharmacists. I had to write to all their boards, the medical board and the social work board, to get my disciplinary action removed from my file. I left for my current job 6 months later. Next story. Most of my colleagues felt the same about a lot of serious issues with the division management. Some of those problems made it nearly impossible for me to work. In particular, bosses standing around shout-laughing in the middle of the group of cubicles all day and distracting everyone. It seemed to impact me more than others, likely because of my inattentive ADHD, but nearly everyone complained quietly to one another about it. I decided to speak up about that and many other issues. I thought that the people that complained about the same things would speak up too if someone went first. You guessed it, crickets. Well, except from the middle managers. Suddenly I was being assigned special projects, being monitored much closer than anyone else for tardiness, long lunches, speaking casually with others, etc. A year or so later, the division manager decided that they were tired of leading the monthly all-hands meetings that they only actually ever lead once every 5 or 6 months. Usually one for the holidays, whooped frickin' do, and one for fiscal year-end strategy. Ugh. They had the brilliant idea that everyone in the division, from the clerical staff on up to the supervising staff, would take turns running the monthly all-hands meetings. Within 5 minutes, the co-inhabitants of my office building were storming their supervisors' doors with pitchforks, torches, and a few Molotov cocktails, screaming, "Once more into the breach, comrades! They can take our lives, but they will never take our freedom. Are we going to have pho or pizza for lunch today?" A minor inconvenience reared its ugly head, and they lopped it off with a full-throated, blood-curdling snarl that would have made Conan the Barbarian soil his loincloth. Honestly, I was a bit proud of them. Meanwhile, I was licking my wounds and trying to dig out from the mountain of work that was suffocating me. The bosses were still shout-laughing, maybe a bit more often, louder, and nearer to my desk, but that's probably just my imagination. Here and there I could find a minute or two where I could read emails or review reports, etc., without having to reboot my focus. But my friends stood up for what mattered to them anyway. About a year later, I couldn't take it anymore, and walked away from a career in which I'd invested nearly 13 years. Next story. I think it's important to be emotionally intelligent enough to understand what kind of friends you are supposed to be with your coworkers. These are transitional friends. You don't overshare personal details with them or rely on them emotionally, but you can enjoy them socially for work, or even after work socializing on a superficial level. Heck, if you don't have friends that you have made outside of work, you can go to social events with your work friends if you don't want to go alone, like concerts, movies, etc. Just remember who they are. You shouldn't trust them with secrets. You should be able to talk to them like adults when you have minor conflicts at work, but ultimately, you shouldn't expect to have a lifelong emotional connection with these people. Superficial level friendships exist, and there is nothing wrong with them. People's feelings get hurt because they set the expectation of work friends where they would set common interest and high emotional connection friendships. Adjust your expectations, and no feelings will get hurt. Next story. I have a few coworkers on my social media. The interesting thing is that none of us, including myself, posts anything personal unless it's a family photo, or, in the case of work, a group photo celebrating a retirement or such. The only photos I post are of our dogs. In my experience, work friendships naturally end when either of you, 1. Leave the department/division/location where both of you work. 2. Leave the company. Or 3. Leave because of a promotion. The meat of your friendship are your daily interactions. Once those interactions cease, it becomes difficult to sustain them. After a while, you realize that your paths are no longer converged. I've worked with a few bullies over the years. Don't give them any ammunition whatsoever. Be cordial, but don't engage. Keep your head down and do your work. Eventually, they'll out themselves, and it won't be pretty. Next story. I naturally am a fairly warm and outgoing guy. I like to connect with people, and unfortunately, this is a lesson I have had to learn several times the hard way. I now no longer fully trust anyone I work with. Fortunately, I'm old and hopefully closing in on the end of my so-called career. My last in-house job was in 2017, at a company that had about 40 people. Trying to make small talk in the break room at lunch was by far the worst part. It was just agonizing. So yes, it's good to be on good terms with your coworkers. You can joke around with them. You can be close acquaintances, but don't take them into your confidence. Pro tip, any workplace that tells you, "We're like family here," you need to run in the other direction as fast as you can. Next story. I worked with a person for over 20 years. They had the exact same job as me. They just covered a different territory within our account space. We had traveled, worked, eaten, drank, gotten to know each other's families. Then he got an offer and just split the scene. I haven't heard from him since. To be fair, I haven't really reached out to him either. I guess at some point I realized I didn't really have friendship-type regard for him either. Next story. Depends on the workplace. I've had it both ways. I've had previous jobs where I felt I'd fucked up and told my coworkers way too much about my personal life. So, when I went into my current job, I kept way more to myself. But over the years, they've truly shown up for me, and I get to be at this place where I have a real work family that I'm super grateful for. Next story. There is no better reminder about this than when someone is fired. Watch how people react. The people that seem so chummy suddenly may never discuss the person again. It's not like a death, but like they never existed. As for the departed coworker, they realize soon enough when few, if any, former coworkers call and check on them. Next story. When you work from home and they are checking to see if you're actually working by messaging unnecessary things. It's so obvious. The irony is that when you're both in office, you can see how much work they are not doing. Plus the snide comments they make about others. Surely they make up nonsense about me too. Next story. In fairness, what did they say in the argument? How did they act? Someone can be awesome and friendly, but have a mean streak, or lose control and say, do something that immediately has people back off them. Also, if they did really say or something bad enough, you don't want to be associated with them. Next story. I learned this fairly young. My company began to steadily collapse and lay people off. People I thought were my friends were not. Survival can bring out the worst in people, but it also helped me establish important work-life boundaries. Next story. Seeing coworkers gossip about other coworkers. Gotta wonder what they are saying about you. I've never been big on sharing personal information at my job. Also, I see them enough that I really don't want to hang out outside of work. Next story. I had a coworker who was buddy-buddy with me, and she and I would always grab breakfast together and talk about life and work. When it was time for reviews, she completely sold me out. Next story. When everyone around you makes conflicts reoccur, and coworkers you once knew start getting hostile. Just left the word job experience in years, and it has been hard finding work. I didn't exactly leave on a high note, but I was one of the best workers. They think I need mental health counseling, and I think they need to be under review. I think they're weaponizing information on me, but it's hard to tell. I suppose if I would have had a simpler group of people, I could have gotten out without the reputation they gave me, but I started to fear for my safety when I saw old coworkers come into the building next door to my apartment. It was a little scary to think that they didn't acknowledge my presence when they were there. I'm slightly scared they may have hacked my social media or something else. In this day and age, anything is possible. I'm not saying I said anything nice in the end, but the intention was to keep myself and others safe. This one could be hard to recover from. The algorithm on social media is weird too. I've seen a lot of things that people describe as a humiliation ritual, and I can't say if I feel comfortable acknowledging that I was part of that. I'm just saying that people were sending the wrong signals. No ordinary workplace. It's hard to build on that. I got scared and ran, and I could see that people were covering something up. There were thefts going on too amongst staff, so I can't say if they think I was part of that. I'm distraught because I think they wanted scapegoat, and I'm afraid to see them in public again. The coworker at my apartment freezes when I ask him about work, and that's a little creepy too. Anytime I say anything, he just kind of stops talking to me like, "We don't talk about Fight Club around here." It's an odd scenario all around. People fear what they can talk about, but it's the first time a simple job really terrified me. The people I worked with must have some legal issues or mental health somewhere, because I've never been approached and threatened at work outside of that place. It's a fairly well-known university in St. Paul. I could write a book on the experience. Not a nice group of people. I'll always remember the day that old coworker told me that he knows why people completely lose it at work. Things got dark fast. I was just unwilling to let it go and cared too much about my sanity to have to deal with the potential of abuse or injury, so I left. Some of the guys there were already in fistfights. I'm scared to say more. Any questions will be directed at them. It's very unhealthy and toxic. I'm still recovering from it and back in therapy as a result. Next story. A former pair of coworkers and I had lunch together every day. I thought they were friends. I gave one of them toys for his dog. I got BarkBox, but my dog didn't like the toys and his did. We talked about everything, had each other's phone numbers, worked right next to each other. Then one got fired for a stupid reason and completely ghosted us. I tried to understand maybe he didn't want to remember the company that fired him. The other one and I remained close, or so I thought. We'd have lunch together and grab coffee after work. We'd sit in his truck and talk about everything. My dad got diagnosed with a terminal disease, and when Mom gave me his game system, a PlayStation 5, I gave it to this friend because I already had the same game systems, and he had kids. I figured he'd enjoy it. Those early morning coffees with him talking about everything were some of the best times of my life. I considered him my best friend, my brother. He would call me sis or love, and he gave the best hugs. Then he swapped shifts, and suddenly everything changed. And one day, a few weeks after my dad died, I woke up and found he blocked me on Steam. I called him to see what was going on, and he told me we were never friends. He said I was psychotic, that I was obsessed with him. I wasn't. I'd message him a couple times a week like I always had, but had I known he didn't want to know me anymore, I wouldn't have bothered him, among other horrible things that I can't seem to forget. He said that he was pretending to be my friend out of pity because I seemed lonely. I was devastated. I just lost my dad, then I lost my best friend too, and looking back it makes sense. I'm autistic, so I don't always have the best judge of character. I always bought our coffees. He was just using me, I guess, but it doesn't stop the grief. I saw him at work one time, months later. I tried to apologize for whatever I did wrong. He turned his back to me and acted like I didn't exist. Ever since then, I have a wall. I refuse to be friends with coworkers. Am I still kind and helpful at work? Of course. I've even had coworkers ask for help outside of work, needing a ride for propane for the RV he lived in, needed help moving, and I will always help people if I can. But as far as friends? No. My coworkers aren't my friends. I don't have friends anymore. The fact is, you never really know your coworkers no matter how much you see them or how close you think you are. To me, it's not worth the pain, but to each their own. Next story. We were both doing an internship at the same company on the same position during the same period. I was 21 with little to no experience in a professional environment, while she was 30 and far more experienced. From the beginning, she was very friendly and open with me, whereas I was more reserved. Over time, I noticed her effort to connect, and I gradually opened up. Eventually, we even started hanging out outside of work. Our conversations weren't just about work. She seemed genuinely interested in me as a person. We also bonded over our shared frustration with our boss, who was quite difficult. We'd often vent to each other. One thing she repeatedly emphasized was that she would never accept a job there if our boss made her an offer. Our attitudes toward the boss seemed to shift over time. I became more indifferent, something I acknowledge I should have handled more independently, while she started acting warmer towards them. This was a reversal from how things started because initially I was more polite and she was openly rude. When our internships came to an end, the boss didn't offer me a position, but they did offer her one and she accepted. It was almost ironic, given everything she had said before. I remember how she soft-launched the news to me, as if easing into the revelation. Another funny moment happened when she called like a month later during working hours. When I couldn't answer and texted her what was up, she told me she had gotten the job. Later, I connected the dots that she had actually called me during the weekly meeting hour, so I would have to congratulate her in front of the other coworkers. What made it even stranger was that it wasn't her first day either. A week earlier, she had told an interviewee who I happened to know that that day was her first day there as a regular employee. Next story. As COVID was slowing and people were returning to the office, I got an admin job where I came in 2 days a week. There were 4 other admins to cover everyone on the team, and our in-office days varied. This one woman's schedule would overlap with mine 1 to 2 days a week, but I came in at 7 a.m. and she would come in around lunchtime, so I wouldn't see her till like 1 to 2 p.m., and then I would leave at 4 p.m. I would say we had casual but friendly interactions. I even helped her with in-office tasks when she WFH, but to emphasize, our in-person interactions were limited to at most 3 hours, and we worked with our backs to each other. And that continued for about 4 years. Then in the span of a month, she redecorated her desk with church quotes, an American flag, and a pic of Charlie Kirk. Now, she was older than me, but in her early 30s, single, and had put up a pride flag during Pride Month. So I was a little surprised, but decided to mind my own business. Then about 3 months later, I come back from vacation, and the senior admin asks me to go to lunch with her. Apparently, while I was gone, HR had spoken to her asking if there had been any complaints about my work ethic, because the worker I see maybe 3 hours a week said I was slacking. And while I get HR had to ask, I'd been asking them for months when they were going to finally hire someone for the 2 temporary positions that were feeling less temporary because I was overwhelmed. So glad I started a new job this year. Next story. My very first job. I was fired within 3 days because I went to my grandmother's funeral 8+ hours drive away rather than come in to do training. I made them aware I was going to the funeral. My manager said, and I quote, "Then you should have driven straight from the funeral back here to work." I knew immediately, okay, this is not going to go well, but begged for my job back and they gave it to me. Something like a year later, I got officially fired. I was having a health problem, and they would not give me a day off to see the doctor, so I ended up being late to and from breaks because, I'll be honest, I could barely walk. After being fired, I ended up in the hospital for a full week. My family was mad enough on my behalf, again, first job, I was 18 to 19, that nobody went there for a year. It was a local grocery store. A year later, when we finally went back into that grocery store, some of my old coworkers went, "Oh, are you back from vacation?" My family and I, baffled, went, "Vacation? What vacation?" Come to find out that when I was fired a year before, manager told everyone I was taking a long vacation, and they believed her. Nobody messaged me. I went to high school with some of my coworkers. They had my phone number and my Facebook, and nobody thought it suspicious that I was going on a long vacation. I know it's stupid, but I haven't trusted a coworker as a friend since. Next story. It's a difficult line to walk in terms of how friendly to be with coworkers and how close you get to them, but as it involves work, there is always likely to be some sort of conflict of interest. Family-run businesses often put strain on the family's relationships as conflicts occur at work, whether it be decision-making, perceived laziness, whatever it may be. I've seen firsthand how quickly siblings can turn on each other in a work environment. It is a similar situation for people who have met through work. For example, everyone in a team could get along, then one day someone calls in sick, except one of them knows they aren't sick. They just wanted the day off for X, Y, or Z. That person not coming in then means the team is a member short, and everyone else has to work extra to cover. In that scenario, the person who knows their coworkers is pulling a fast one may well feel aggrieved they've let the team down, and everyone has now had to work extra because of it. That person feeling aggrieved then shows manager screenshot of that person's social media enjoying a day at the beach. I am not saying it is right or wrong to call that person out, by the way, but I am putting forward the argument that when it comes to work, it is easy to see why people fall out and aren't actually friends. Next story. I was young and naive, and I told a colleague how much I made. They went straight to their boss and demanded a raise, because I was new, was doing the same job, and made more than him. I was fortunate that our boss recognized that I was a child and didn't know better, so I did not get in a world of trouble, but he told me to never do that again in my professional life. A woman that I suspect had BPD, I was her favorite. She would corner me and talk to me for long periods of time about her tragic life story. If anyone came around, she would clam up and go back to working. I avoided her because I could not talk for hours. I had work to do. When I started doing that, I asked her for something work-related, and she came at me. It was crazy. She told me that I had been bullying her for months, called me horrible names, ripped into me, and started coming at me, pointing her finger at me. I went straight to HR. She had been there for 1 year and had changed managers because she could not work with them, had friction with a colleague, and called another person into HR. I had been at the company 10 years and never had one problem. We both got written up because this incident happened when nobody was around, and it was all she said. She left within 2 months. I left at month 4. Next story. When I was in my early 20s, I worked for an expensive hotel and had a bunch of 18-year-olds I worked with. Then this girl who worked with us got into trouble with her brother. They would go around and rob vacation homes and then pawn the items. Little did I know she became a confidential informant to get out of trouble and try and get her brother a lighter sentence. This girl saw me one night getting beer at a gas station and asked me to buy her some. Any kind, didn't matter. So I told her, how about you steal it and I wouldn't tell on her. So I got my beer and left, and 1 block over, I got pulled over. Cops start questioning me up and down about buying beer for minors and grilled me for an hour. I told him I bought my beer and he can go ask the clerk. Finally, when I'm leaving, I decided to go up 2 blocks and turn around and drive back by cop. And that's when I see that girl crying in the passenger seat, and she's seen me and just froze, looking dumbfounded. Turns out she stole a 40-ounce and tried blaming me for buying it. The cops went back to store and watched the security cameras, and it showed her stealing the 40 ounces. She didn't come back to work, and I never saw her again. Found out later she got 3 months in jail for stealing beer and lying to cops, and 5 years for the burglary. Next story. I almost became roommates with them. We chatted and hung out all the time. Then one weekend we had a little tiff. It seriously was a minor thing and got over it easily. And then she barely talked to me, never wanted to hang out, etc. I could just tell she didn't want me to room with her. I was moving to their 2-bedroom apartment. Then they left for some other program. There is a whole list I could put down, but it would be its own post. But to make some notes, the other coworker I ended up roommating with after, which was fine and were a good roommate, I tried to say no nicely at first because the asshole told me lies about how they were bullied by this person. Lies. She lied about stuff to make herself sound like the victim, and how because she came from money, people treated her like a piggy bank. Not saying this didn't happen, but not the amount of time she claimed for sure. Basically would be upset when people would play against her in games, but she was happy to play dirty against them. Everyone was glad she was gone. Learned how she treated others over time. She lived in her own little world and treated everyone like some secondary character in her life. Next story. For me, it was realizing that I wasn't as inner circle as I thought. I already knew the women I had lunch with in my male-dominated field were just colleagues, so I thought I had my eyes wide open. But I had a work friend who I started at the company with and talked to outside of work even though we lived in different cities. We did happy hours with other colleagues and traveled together early to conferences just to hang out. I considered her an actual friend and was thrilled when we both got transferred to the company's HQ. So I was completely stunned when I found out through the grapevine that she was dating our older former coworker, who ended up being my direct boss when I got to HQ. They had been dating for 4 years, and I only found out from piecing well together instances over the years where I sensed something deeper. I wanted to think that she didn't tell me because it's a delicate work situation, but once I got to home office, I found out so many people knew about their relationship for years. Next story. I was let go from my job a month ago. The dude who I shared an office with was someone who I considered my friend. Technically, he was my direct superior, but we had so much fun together in that office that it felt like a real friendship. We laughed together every day, he came to my birthday party, we exchanged Christmas gifts, etc. When they let me go, he was in the room since he was my superior, and for the entire meeting, he didn't say anything. Afterwards, when I was packing up my desk, he stood around a nearby coworker's desk advising him on something, and still didn't say a single word to me. I think maybe it hurt the most because of how blindsided I was. I thought that even if the job didn't work out, someone would at least care enough about me to say goodbye at least. Kyle, if you're out there, that was really brutal. I hope you're still doing good though. I miss you guys, even though now I know I probably shouldn't. Next story. The more toxic the company culture, not like a switch but in degrees, the more inhuman the work environment becomes. When the fear is strong enough, people will dissociate immediately to avoid more of the same. They will also try to find safety engaging this culture by fitting into it, turning into spies and snitches for whatever figure leads this culture. At one place I worked, I got into trouble politically, and it was made known, into an official program. A junior manager circulated among the office staff and explained there was an attempt being made to dig up dirt in me to get me fired, and would they be in on this? Of course, this is sort of both wannabe gangster and super ignorant, to leave heavy fingerprints like this on a civil conspiracy. No, it has not worked out for them long-term as their key customer is strangling them. Next story. In my first full-time office job, where I was for about 5 years, I thought I had found my best friend. We talked every day about non-work related stuff, laughed, joked, all that stuff. They even came to my 30th birthday party. When COVID happened, everyone was let go. That's when I realized that every time we spoke via text outside work, I was always the one initiating it. I invited them over a few times, and they always had some sort of excuse. Eventually, I decided to wait and let them reach out to me for once. They never did. And now here I am 6 years later, and we never spoke again. So yeah, we were clearly on colleagues in their eyes. Very much made me put up a wall again. All colleagues now. I'm polite and friendly, but that's it. It was a hard lesson for an introvert like me, who only opens up when I really like you. So much for that. Next story. Mine is really subtle. A new hire called me for help one night. I spent about 20 minutes helping her and had to stop dinner prep. Afterwards, I advised her she should learn to do these things on her own so that it doesn't happen again. The next day, turns out she called my 2 other supervisors, and I was the only one who answered. They asked her why she was calling, and she lied by omission to why she called. I don't know. I felt a bit off about that. Like it's not something that she should lie about. It was so simple. It made me realize that she was too focused on what my supervisors would think about her that she would lie about a simple thing. It could be because she was a new hire, and she did not want them to look down on her. But yeah, not gonna be venting to her about my manager again. I don't know what she would do with that info. Next story. I moved to a small town and got a new job where everyone was about 10 years older than myself. I quickly became assistant manager. One of the longtime employees left, and his younger sister was hired. She had gone to school with almost everyone who worked there. We had after-work parties every weekend, which was usually bonfires and beer and such at one or another employee's house. We all got along great, and we were like a big family. Birthdays, nights at the bar, we all hung out together. When I was training the new girl, I noticed her slipping a $100 bill into her pocket when she was ringing something up. At the end of the night, I counted her till, and it was $98.64 short. I told the owner that I saw her stealing, and she was fired the next day. From that day forward, I was never invited to another hangout, and everyone basically ignored me. Next story. At one of my previous jobs, we had a few company nurses. One particular hot summer, a guy fell out due to heat exhaustion. Other employees rushed him into an air-conditioned room where he became unconscious. 911 was called before the ambulance could get there. The lead nurse gets on scene and immediately starts force-feeding him sugar pills and making him swallow juice. The paramedics get there, bring him around, and immediately have to start injecting him with his insulin all the way to the hospital. He was extremely diabetic, and according to the paramedics, his blood sugar was so high, never were able to get a reading during the entire 30-minute commute, and their machine will read over a 1,000. Luckily, the hospital was able to save his life. Our absolutely terrible management team praised the nurse and gave her an award. That was an eye-opener. Next story. It was after my first job. I thought I was mates with the bloke I worked with. We went out, we did trips together on the weekend, we talked. I thought we were mates. I was unceremoniously fired for a personality conflict with my elderly boss. I was 21, she was 60 plus, that I was never able to resolve. I walked out the door and he never called me. I called him several times, but the cold shoulder was palpable. We never ate another meal together. We never went on another weekend trip together. Apart from being out of work, broke, and confused about being fired, I also felt like I lost a good friend, and I did not understand why or how. We worked together for almost 3 years, the last 2.5 of which we were friends. It was crushing, and people you work with are not your friends. Next story. A guy I used to hang around with at work had a tendon problem and had to be off work for 3 months. 2 weeks after he came back, the HR fired him without any warnings. My manager said that his contract was terminated due to poor performance, but in reality, we all knew why. What surprised me the most were my coworkers acting as if he was never here. No one else seemed to be frustrated that someone who'd been working here for 3 years was fired just like that. Tried asking another guy who's been here longer than I have, and he gave me the same answer as the manager: poor performance. Coworkers are not your friends. They are just people who you work with. After you leave the job, everyone is going to forget you in less than a week. Have already seen it happen with 5 other people who quit the job. Next story. I've worked places where I have been real friends, but I was at one job where I knew I wasn't getting invited to after-work hangouts. That's fine, but I was talking to a coworker about attending an event that we both wanted to go to. I bought tickets, and then she canceled right before we were supposed to attend. I had a similar situation where I got free tickets to an event, which included free drink tickets. I mentioned it. A coworker begged to show up, and then told me they weren't showing when I was at the event location. After that, don't ask me for mess. I don't need to be a member of every clique, but don't waste my time and money. Most annoying thing about it is I got another job that has amazing discounts, and folks think they can hit me up. Lose my number. Next story. I once came across a colleague who was truly at the very end of the psychopathy spectrum. He put on a whole show at work. He painted bruises under his eyes with mascara to look sick and evoke pity, and he even used false teeth for the same reason. As it later turned out, he spent a year collecting incriminating evidence in the form of text, screenshots, and audio recordings. And one fine day, he used this to facilitate the dismissal of his boss. To try to take his place, he didn't succeed. I still can't wrap my head around how it's even possible to wear false teeth. It's crazy. At the same time, this person knows how to present himself as a reasonable and polite person. In general, you need to be careful with all people at work whom you don't know well. Next story. Came up with a group of people at the same company. More than 20 years together. We used to go out regularly after work, attended their weddings, etc. That slowed down after we all had kids, but we were still friends, I thought. A few years ago I got sick, organ failure, and had to take an extended leave. Got wind several of them would be in my end of town for a morning event, not work-related, on a Saturday. So I reached out and offered to host lunch and reminisce. Everyone agreed, so I made a big chili and cleaned the house to get ready. It was a big effort given how sick I was, but I was looking forward to it. No one showed up. They all ghosted. We may have been friends once, but at this point we're just acquaintances. Next story. In a previous job, I worked in HR and was very friendly with the payroll person. I did not have access to her program, but if a correction had to be made in the HR program, she would walk me through how to do what she needed. Otherwise, I had no reason to use that part of the program, and I needed her direction every time. One day there was an issue with someone's pay, and she told my boss that I had probably made the mistake. It was later shown that the mistake was hers, but that part wasn't told. My boss didn't hesitate but ran right to me asking if he had changed so-and-so's pay. I was crushed, both because she accused me and because my boss, who I already knew disliked me, automatically assumed that I had deliberately done this. Next story. When they drugged me at a staff party, after putting me in a cab because I was too wasted to get let into a bar, they kept/stole my wallet. I apparently jumped out of the cab a block away from my house, but didn't make it home until 3 hours later. I broke my key in the door, screaming and panicking about a man. My mom played detective and spoke with the cab driver, wanted me to file a police report and get a forensic examination, but I didn't. This was early 2000s. I didn't know what being drugged was. Everyone gaslit me and convinced me I was just too wasted, even though I only had one drink. I didn't remember anything after the staff party. It was terrifying. These were females, by the way. I was their supervisor. Next story. I learned that very young when I had coworkers turn on me in retail. Most of them are still stuck in retail decades later. The worst time was when I worked at a TCBY, and one of the workers carried something, walked into me, and dropped a jug of liquid mix. She blamed me, the boss told me so, I got fired, and tricked into giving up unemployment. I stopped by a few months later, and she was still there, and tried to pretend like she didn't do anything. A few months later, that TCBY got shut down. Almost every place I've worked at has been run by middle-class customer service workers who would turn on fellow workers for a high-five/special treatment, only to be let out themselves not long afterward. Next story. My foreman gave me plans for building a test instrument. He said we need 6 of them. I built 6 of them before lunch. Turns out, 2 of them needed to be to the plans he gave me. 2 needed another arrangement, and another 2 needed another different arrangement. He never thought I'd get close to working on a third one. He then proceeded to tell the owners I screwed up. I was new and young. Then told me what he did, and to just go along with it. I did, but we hashed it out outside of work. To be honest, other than that instance, my coworkers have been nothing but advocates for me, and I for them. I often get word of someone singing my praises, from supers down to the floor sweepers. Next story. Just before lockdowns for COVID, we got a memo from the directors essentially saying, and I want to stress that I'm not being hyperbolic here, don't worry about COVID. We'll just have to make some people redundant. So I knew it was coming. But when they finally announced redundancies, I was trying to get literally any information from someone I had considered a friend and was still working, and she acted like she didn't know anything, and then wouldn't return my things from my desk. I had been let go, had no way to impact the job she still had, and when I was just trying to make sense of it, she chose to stay loyal to people she had complained about every day with me. Next story. I have a coworker with whom I really am close with. We hang out outside of work, and they even came to a non-work event that honored me. Meanwhile, I have another coworker who I also have hung out with outside of work. However, they are very frequently going into our manager's office and shutting the door, and many of us see they receive certain perks other coworkers do not. They also report to the manager often, and is often asked to tell manager what we're up to when he's not in the office, working from home. So strange. I know better than to trust everyone in my office that way. Personally, it just takes time to weed out who is and is not trustworthy. Next story. I have formed maybe 2 solid friendships with my coworkers. One from my previous job and one at my current. Doesn't always happen, but I got lucky. However, I recently had to place boundaries between my and a coworker. I thought we were friends, but they basically would shut me down if I wanted to vent, but they could vent whenever and for however long they want. They were condescending to me on several different occasions, and they also thought I would give them work on the cheap, free. I'm a graphic designer, and I just don't have time for fake friends and one-sided relationships. I'll still be professional with this person, but they're not my friend. Next story. A guy I worked with nearly every day for 4 years. Considered him a friend outside of work. He quit and started his own business he had been planning for over a year and never said a word to me. That wouldn't have been a big deal if we didn't talk all the time about both of us starting a business together. We worked extremely well together and different skill sets that allowed us to do basically everything in our field. My boss called us his A-team in private. Management were so convinced I was going to work with him that they were already planning how to replace me because they just assumed I was going with him. He never said a word. Next story. Can I just say that the actual problem is that some people are just terrible. It has nothing to do with work. You'd normally avoid them or be in a fun-only situation, which is usually the case with friends. Many people are pieces of mess, and the consequences of that are more likely to be felt at work. I know some pretty decent human beings at work, and some pieces of mess I trusted when I shouldn't have because I hadn't worked out who they were yet. All human relationships matter, and work isn't some magical place where things work differently. The worst people are always the weak of character or the ambitious, domineering types. Next story. Getting a promotion. Most friends became distant. Many who didn't speak to me before started kissing my behind, and those whom disliked me before really geared up their smear campaigns. First time in my life that I remotely understood what "it's lonely at the top" really meant. With the top in this case being middle management. It made me truly understand that work is work, and to really only trust relationships built away from my professional life. Many years later, many of the friends who distanced themselves have warmed back up, but I won't forget. We get along great, but it's truly just a professional relationship now. Next story. I have had some older work colleagues, bosses I went on holiday with, came to the hospital with me when my mom was dying, and helped with funeral, helped me kit out my first flat, spent Christmas days, birthdays, etc. with them. This all happened 10 plus years ago, and I still class them as my mums, even though we no longer work alongside each other. Then there's others who blindside you for so long with their two-facedness until you see them for the snakes they are. I'm a soft touch, but once I see the truth, I'm never the same, and I'll give the bare minimum to work together, but that's it. It can go either way. Next story. They all watched me get thrown under the bus, and some contributed to the throwing, and demoted, and then proceeded to act like everything was fine while gossiping behind my back about it all. I now work from home 90% of the time. When I am in the office to see clients, they, coworkers, get a polite but cursory hello and goodbye, and that's about it. The worst part is, I can see they are doing the same thing to the very young manager they have put in place. The whole place is toxic as heck, and the only reasons I am putting up with it is pay and my clients. If I didn't work from home, I'd have quit. Next story. It took me quite a few times to realize, but it was always when I opened my big mouth to someone privately who seemed like a work friend. Invariably, someone else would tell me, "Oh, I heard you said," and it was super awkward. Now I just shut my trap about everything. No gossip, no venting, commiserating privately to a coworker about someone else or some work issue. No sharing of personal information or what your plans are for promotion. Don't even tell them what vacation dates you are hoping for, because if they want the same ones, they will find a way to nip in ahead of you to get them. Next story. I got super lucky that the first real job I had was at the small-sized branch of a mid-sized credit union, where my coworkers were the best part of my job, and the only reason I stayed for as long as I did had a few of the usual problems: lazy coworkers, kiss-ups, management plays favorites, and most of us tellers didn't even text outside work, let alone hang out. But most people were nice, personable, and easygoing, made getting through the day bearable. Never had any job since then where the coworkers were a positive point in my day, let alone the level of being friends outside of work. Next story. In my old department, I definitely learned this the hard way. Had these two coworkers who were so buddy-buddy with me, and I was hurt when they left. I learned that they never say me as a friend while I let myself get fooled. About a year ago, I got moved into a new department, and frankly, I feel blessed. I know I should keep my guard up, but my coworkers have been so kind and welcoming of me, which is a far cry from the introversion of my old department. Frankly, I feel like I'm happier at work than in my personal life because my real friends don't bother to respond until months later. Next story. I have had this discussion with the owner of my company 3 times. Hey, why don't you engage with your employees more and get to know them and be friends? My answer. I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to run a business. Friends expect favors and expect to be treated differently because they are friends. When it comes time to fire someone, I want it to be clean and not personal. I am also fond of saying, just like Vietnam, don't want to know the new people's names until they make it past 90 days. That our trial period, and statistically, 50% don't make it. Next story. Got chewed out by a supervisor as soon as I got out my car this morning because a coworker, I thought of as a friend, had told them I'd not cleaned my station last night. It wasn't my station. I'd had nothing to do with that station. The coworker wasn't in yesterday, so had no idea who had what station, and it wasn't even the coworker's station, so didn't impact him at all. The worst part is he leaves the job tomorrow, so there's nothing for him to gain by stitching me up. I've made it clear how unimpressed I am, so we're having a super awkward last day together. Next story. I'd always been warned that some coworkers have hidden agendas and prone to backstabbing. I once heard about a messy soap opera type scenario that made backstabbing for promotions seem tame. 4 female coworkers were quite chummy during and outside of work. 2 were married and 2 were single. A husband who didn't work for the company was having an affair with one of the single women. The other single woman and the other married woman knew about the affair. Meanwhile, all 3 were smiling in the face of the woman who was being cheated on. Next story. The way one of mine seemed interested in hanging out outside of work and then abruptly pulled back the second my performance wasn't good, even though I was new and still learning. I feel like if someone was wanting to be your friend, they would try to support and help you, or would ask if you're okay, etc. Instead, she just iced me out and started excluding me from things. And now, I wish I had never shared any personal information with her, because I just imagine her using it against me or making fun of me to everyone else behind my back. Next story, I got a talking to from HR about something I posted on FB. There had been a layoff. I posted that I wasn't impacted, but my heart went out to those who were. In the comments, someone asked what teams were impacted, and I told them in a very general way. The post was visible to my friends only, so one of my friends who still worked there had to have reported me to HR for that post. I took the post down. It was no big deal, but it made me realize these people aren't really my friends. And I don't post mess on FB anymore. Next story. It's literally anywhere you interact with a large number of people for an extended period of time. School, volunteering, church, work, etc. Fact is, there's good and bad people, people you have mess in common with, and others you don't. All I know is, I've met some of my best friends at work and school, as well as some of my worst enemies. They aren't your friends when they don't fit your definition of friend. For me, that's common interests and values. Then, must match personality and have integrity, honesty, and loyalty. Next story. I've found too many times that coworkers talk about each other behind their backs, and I don't want to even open the door for that kind of nonsense anymore. I don't accept friend requests from any of my current coworkers on any social media, and I'm very cautious even connecting with former coworkers. I'm friendly at work, and if I run into them outside of work, but I do not make plans and seldom interact with them during my time off. That time is my time, and I don't want to bring work into it. Next story. I worked with someone for years and we got close. Due to several personal life things, her mental health took a hard hit, which overflowed to her work, and eventually she left and she burned bridges on the way out. She became a very different person from the one I knew by the end. I was absolutely sweating some text with her that out of context were problematic. Be friends with coworkers, but not ride or die friendly. Next story. Sometimes you let things go until you realize that they have been openly backstabbing for probably the entire time you've worked there. For me, as soon as I started calling them out on some of the crappy behavior, they really turned the screws. Taught me that no matter how much they say they love you, they only do when you don't do better than them at work. Now, I talk to people at work and genuinely like them, mostly. But no more will I put my heart into work relationships. Next story. A true close friendship with a coworker is rare. I have several people at work I'm very friendly with, even to the point of texting outside of work hours and stuff. But I only have one coworker who is truly a friend of mine, as in, regularly hang out outside of work, share deeply personal things with each other, genuinely consider each other like family. And in my whole career, that person is the first to reach that level. But I've always been friendly with colleagues. Next story. Thankfully, I work from home, so there isn't a ton of work politics. But there is a coworker I have that throws you or anyone under the bus. I truly don't tell her anything anymore and just work closely with her and that's it. We exchanged phone numbers and one time she asked me about something about work at 6 p.m. because something happened and I ignored it. I don't like coworkers texting me. That was the last time I ever gave my number to a coworker. Next story. First thing I say when I start a new job is explain to anyone that wants to get chatty. I'll be glad to talk to you when I have time, but I'm here to make money, not friends. I will be happy to work with you and do my best to get along, but don't expect me sharing my socials or hanging out away from this place. Fortunately, it's done well for me. People are nice enough, and I get my job done without people constantly wanting to stop by and talk. Next story. The backstabbing and gossip that comes with trying to climb the work hierarchy. Once I got into management, I made a promise to myself to keep it friendly but professional with my coworkers. Sure, it's lonely at times, and the trash talk still persists, but I choose not to make it a problem for me. The troops around the campfire need to let off some steam every now and then, so I let them. To a certain degree, of course. You can't let everything slide. Next story. I had to work closely with a guy who lost sight of the fact that his coworkers were under no obligation to work around his numerous personal woes. He also convinced himself how our supervisor was his friend, when she was clearly not. I complained about it. They sided with him. After they canned me, he lasted 4 weeks on his own. Now, he's gone too. Next story. I was never under the decision that my coworkers were friends, because they're not people I would willingly hang out with of my own volition. They're people I'm paid to endure in close proximity 8 to 12 hours a day. I don't have friends, and I don't do friends. I don't even know what it would look or feel like knowing a person who would be a worthwhile friend, since I can't actually think of anything I need from people at this point in my life. Next story. I know how colleagues are and don't expect much from them, especially at my current workplace, and how awful they are to me. But a colleague recently felt betrayed because our manager told us that people have made complaints about us talking too much. I'm not upset, because I know it is unfair of us to do that, and it's mostly my fault because I go to her to talk. But she felt betrayed, and that they should have told her or us directly. Next story. Worked at a place for a year. Me and this woman hit it off right away. We never hung out outside of work, but we text each other all the time. One day, she just quit talking to me. Like absolutely radio silence. Coworkers would even comment on how I was being iced out. I ended up leaving the job because it was causing such anxiety. Sitting in the same room with someone who would actively go out of the way to not speak with me. Next story. Coworker I considered a friend threw an absolute hissy fit when asked to cover some urgent work while I was on annual leave, and complained to management, which resulted in me being called into a pre-disciplinary meeting. This was 2 months ago, and he's still not spoken to me. I've decided I don't care, so I'm not going out of my way to build bridges. He's far more likely to need my help than I am to need his. Next story. Had some compliance issues with a group of staff regarding expired competencies, etc. It was high level, and a weekly updated tracker was discussed in a meeting we had with management. CEO's right-hand man asks me, "Can we remove all of Dave's paperwork, please? It is no longer a concern. He's dead. Can you look at this guy and let us know what you think? We're hoping to get a replacement in the role, ASAP." Next story. I've never learned this lesson. I've been and still am friends with coworkers and bosses from most of the jobs I've held over the last 16 years. That's not every coworker, and it's not to say that the friendships haven't changed or, in some cases, faded. There are also coworkers who are clearly just work friends, and that's fine too. I'm actually kind of baffled people are confused about this. Next story. When one particular coworker started targeting all of the male employees she considered problematic, it was endless drama and walking on eggshells. Oh, and certain personality types thrive on drama. The quiet people are the most normal ones in an office environment. Drama and gossip can be a serious problem, but men tend to have a boys' club. You can't really win regardless. Next story. I trust very slowly at work. Turtle pace. Took me about 8 years to develop a relationship with people who I could trust. There were plenty of opportunities for them to screw me, and I them. We did not. 40% of my department was laid off on Friday. We are not coworkers anymore. We are friends helping each other to the next chapter. I know this is an exception to the rule. Next story. Someone I genuinely liked just disappeared one day, and everyone acted like she never existed. It's a weird kind of unspoken workplace survival instinct, where people distance themselves to avoid any association with whoever got let go. Took me a while to accept it, but yeah, professional is the great move I swore not to break. Save the real friendships for outside of work always. Next story. I had a work friend from very small company. Her husband worked out of town, so we would get together every Saturday night to watch movies, have dinner. Sometimes we would go shopping together. Anyway, we both quit the company and moved to different states. I was heartbroken when every time I tried to call she couldn't talk, and would not call me back later. Very disappointing. Next story. I was super friendly with them, and I'm not finding out that I am being left off of emails and out of meetings. And some of these meetings are in my territory. Now I don't really trust them and have reverted back to, we work together. I will collaborate and cooperate as needed, but I will not be telling you about my weekend or my personal life. Next story. I have had the pleasure of making friends with many coworkers. Drinks on a Friday, staff parties, genuine conversations, enjoyable relationships. As you move on into different roles, you lose contact. But the moment you are reunited, it's like old times. They may not exist in your everyday anymore, but you can still consider them friends.